In this video, we're going to talk about living in Indianapolis versus living in the suburbs and the pros and cons of each. So stay tuned. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Jason Compton. This is Living in Indianapolis. If you want to know everything there is to know about living in Indianapolis and the surrounding areas, then make sure you subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you're notified every time I do a new video each week. And honestly, I get so many calls from people all over the place moving to Indianapolis or moving within the Indy Metro. And if you're even thinking about making a move, then make sure you give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email, any way you want to get a hold of me, and I've got your back whenever you're moving to Indianapolis. All right, so let's talk about living in Indianapolis versus living in the suburbs of Indianapolis. There are going to be pros and cons for each. Everybody has different reasons for living in different parts of any city or outside of a city. It depends on what your individual needs are. If you're single, if you are married, if you have kids, if you don't, what you're interested in, what your job is like, where you work. Everybody knows what their personal preferences are. So in this video, we're going to go into 3 cons and 3 pros of actually living either in the suburbs or in the actual city of Indianapolis. So let's get the negative out of the way first. Let's go through the 3 cons of living in the Indianapolis suburbs versus the actual city of Indianapolis, and especially the downtown area. So con number 1, Indianapolis is actually really spread out. Indianapolis is a surprisingly big city. It's a very big city in the country, and it's not one of those that's really just all stacked and super dense as far as the population is concerned. We're very spread out here. It can be close to 20 miles from one side of the city to the other. So if you live in the Indianapolis suburbs and you work in the city, especially downtown, you are going to be driving. You have a long commute, and you're also probably going to be driving when everybody else is driving. So at 5 o'clock in the evening, at 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, there will be a lot of traffic. It's going to add on to your commute without a doubt. Or if you live in the suburbs and you work in the suburbs, you're going to have a disconnect with everything that's going on in downtown Indianapolis just because of the sheer distance. You will have to make a concerted effort to be involved in a lot of things that are going on in downtown Indianapolis. And what's going on in downtown Indy? Well, there's plenty, and there's probably a whole lot more than what most people know. Of course, we've got some of the most well-known things like the Indianapolis Colts. We've got the Indiana Pacers, we've got the Indiana Fever, we've got the Indy 11, we've got the Indianapolis Indians, which is a AAA baseball team. They play at Victory Field. And we've got our museums, the Children's Museum. It's been named the best children's museum in the entire world. It's towards downtown Indianapolis. We've got the canal, we've got other museums. We have all of the festivals and all of the events that go on in downtown Indianapolis. And what's one of the great things about downtown Indy is that it's so compact and everything is so close that it's extremely walkable. But if you live in the suburbs, you got to drive down there and take a heck of a lot of time just to get to it. So you will likely feel a little bit of a disconnect with it. And like I said, make a really concerted effort to try to make it downtown for a lot of those events and a lot of the stuff that's generally happening. And that includes the food scene. Some of the suburbs, they do have great restaurants. But when you get into the suburbs, just like in a lot of places in the country, suburbs have a lot of the chain restaurants. So if you want some of the exploding part of the food scene, and the food scene is certainly exploding here in Indianapolis, most of that is downtown or very close to downtown. It's in a neighborhood that is near that area. So it's a decent distance from those Indianapolis suburbs. So con number 2 is cultural diversity. You will not have, in general, the same amount of cultural diversity in the suburbs that you have in the city of Indianapolis. Now, roughly a century ago, back in 1900, there were only 12 cities in the entire world that had over 1 million people. Now, half of the world's population lives in cities. And in those cities, they bring all of their culture, at least a lot of their culture, with them. Now, Indianapolis does have some of that based on the early settlers of Indianapolis. So it has areas of the city that have been influenced by the cultures of these people settling here. And right now, Indianapolis has 7 cultural districts, defined cultural districts. So we've got Broad Ripple, we've got Mass Ave, we have Fountain Square, we have the Wholesale District, we have the Canal and White River State Park, and then there's Indiana Avenue and Market East. And they all have their own unique history and their own cultural diversity involved with them. So not going to get that nearly as much as what you're going to have, or you're not going to get that nearly as much, at least in the suburbs, as what you're going to have in cultural districts like that, or in other parts of the downtown area or near that downtown area of Indianapolis. Con number 3 is transportation. Now, Indianapolis, the public transport system here is not phenomenal. It's for a city of its size, it's just so incredibly spread out. It's something that's pretty difficult to do. Now, it is improving with the Red Line and Indigo, the bus system, but it's not as good as it can be, and it's certainly not as good as it is in other places. But if you live in the suburbs, then your chances for having public transportation is probably non-existent. I mean, you're going to be relying certainly on your own car or your cars. If you're a family, you're probably going to have more than one car, maybe even 3, sometimes 4 cars, depending on the size of your family. You've got taxis, but you have to call for them and they have to come and get you, just like you would with Uber and Lyft. And that can be a little bit time consuming. And sometimes in a taxi's case, or Uber or Lyft, it can be expensive too. But if you live in the city, in the downtown area especially, you can get by, and especially if you work there, without a car at all. You can walk, you can ride your bike. Now, it's probably not absolutely the best when the weather's really bad or through the Indianapolis winter, but you can choose to do that. Or you can have a much smaller, much cheaper car that's a little bit more fit for a large city, where you can park it in smaller places and you're just not going to be carrying around maybe as much as you would if you live out in the suburbs. So transportation can certainly be a negative if you live out in the suburbs, having to commute almost everywhere for work or whatever it is that you want to do in the city. When you live in the city, you're right there near a lot of those things. So let's look at some of the pros now. So pro number 1 is that things are usually cheaper in the suburbs. So your cost of living is now this could be a choice for everybody. You can make your life as expensive as you want, or in some cases, cheaper than what you could normally. But in the suburbs, generally, it should be cheaper. Now, the cost of living in Indianapolis in general is really pretty low for a big city, for a city of its size at least. But if you get out into the suburbs, what I mean by cheaper is that you're going to get so much more for your money than what you're going to in downtown Indianapolis. So for example, if you have $400,000 to spend, you've got a lot of choices in downtown Indy or some of the neighborhoods around the downtown Indy area and close to it. But you're going to end up getting maybe a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, or 3-bedroom condo, sometimes a detached single-family home, depending on the neighborhood. And it might be less than 1,000 square feet, and it could be all the way up to 2,000 square feet or possibly a little bit more. But if you get out into the suburbs, places like Fishers or Westfield or Noblesville or Avon or Brownsburg or Greenwood, $400,000 is going to take you a very long way. You'd be able to get a 4 or 5-bedroom house, a lot of times with a basement, sometimes with a 3-car garage, and maybe 4,000 square feet or so, certainly beyond the 3,000 square foot mark, and sometimes even larger than 4,000 square feet. You do tend to get a lot more for your money when you get out into the suburbs compared to downtown. And pro number 2 for living in the suburbs compared to the city is that the suburbs are statistically and generally safer than living in the city. And I'm not talking about just violent crime, because violent crime does happen more often in the city than it does in the suburbs. But even smaller crimes like petty crime, stuff like your car being broken into, that happens generally more in the city where you have more people and they're closer together than what you have in the suburbs. Plus, in the city, if you live right there in downtown or some of the neighborhoods just off of downtown, your car might have to be parked on the street. It may not be parked in a garage. So in the suburbs, your chances of having to park on the street are less. Now, some people have pretty good sized garages and they're full of junk and they can't get their cars in, but at least you have the option of putting your car in there and it's protected. So in general, statistically speaking, the suburbs tend to be a little safer than what you have in the city. And pro number 3, and this is something that is trying to get rid of that disconnect, I guess, or the feel of the disconnect between the suburbs and the city, is that most of the suburbs, especially here in the past 10 years or so, they've developed their own personality. They have their own feel. And this is because a lot of the leaders in some of the suburbs have put a really big focus and a lot of money and a lot of effort in rebuilding or building a downtown area in the suburb itself. And some of the big examples would be Carmel and Fishers and Zionsville. They've had a lot of effort being put into those areas to try to bring people back to the city center rather than having this suburban sprawl and a lot of the negatives that can be associated with that. So the focus in bringing a lot of these people and a lot of the city back to a center is a focus on community, walkability, and having a real sense of belonging to a particular place. And it also creates a tremendous number of things to do for people who live in those suburbs and places to go. So businesses that are local and unique, shops of all different kinds. You have bars and restaurants that are opening up that are unique and unique to that particular community to give it its own particular feel. There you have it, Indianapolis versus the suburbs. What's right for you? Only you really could know. But if you have questions about specifics with Indy or any of the suburbs, let me know. I'm happy to help you out with those. And until the next video, see you.